Well, let's go ahead and get started. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I wanted to provide some kind of a venue or format for communicating with you. You've all reached out to me at some point, and we've had a conversation, or I never responded to an email that you sent, which is probably more likely. I really, after the retreat, was somewhat inundated with questions about family education centers. And many other families that aren't with us today. So I'm recording this because they have conflicts and they still wanted to get the information. So this was the best way that I felt that I could efficiently share some information with you, and that we could start this whole listening process that we're in, this listening, learning, understanding phase that we're in this whole year, I imagine. And I wanted to give you an update of some things that we've done since we announced Lift Ed at the retreat, and solidified again and reinforced the idea that we want to support communities of learners so that they can be more successful as they gather with families wherever they're at in the world. It is one of the most, it is the most significant, most important initiative that we have is the work of learning, finding out how we can support learning communities. And the reason that's the case is because nothing that we do, no curricular development, no software development, no event will replace the value of in-person connection and learning, which is not something you're going to hear from many homeschool providers or online school providers, because that is the business, right? That is the business of what they're about, is producing curriculum or resources or activities and events virtually, or that a parent would use in the home. But for us, it is all, and it always has been, about impact and a family's success. And we know now, and every other curriculum provider out there knows, that the failure rate of homeschooling, independent homeschooling, is really high. Now, I got to start with some hopes and acknowledgements, all right? I think it's really important that I acknowledge that this idea of supporting learning communities will look different for every learning community, just the same way that every homeschool is different, every learning community is different. And so we understand that what we're perhaps even piloting this fall with Angie Blad in Omaha and Marcy Frogley in Boise, and potentially Ashley in a group that she's working with down there. She's closer to us, and we'd love to have somebody, we'd love to have a group of families that we can learn from that's especially close to us, or closer to us than Boise and Omaha. But we don't want to get too aggressive in all of this. So we want to be very careful that we are small this first year while we're learning. But there's so much that can be done. There's so much that we can learn from all of you who are already doing this. Some of you are, and some of you aren't. But many of the families that have reached out to us, and most of you here, are part of a learning community already. And so really our job is to find out, what does supporting a learning community look like? And we have some things in mind. We feel like sort of supporting a learning community will have to be supporting a cooperative. That supporting a learning community will have to be supporting a Commonwealth, supporting a micro school, supporting a sister school even. And so it'll have to look different. We could codify these in a way, and that's the hope for us, is that we can produce the kinds of resources and the kind of support system that allows any learning community to come to American Heritage and receive the benefits of 52 years of formal education in the way that they need for their group, that they can access the accreditation of the school, that they can access the content of the school, the software of the school, the operational documents and support of the school, the marketing and budgeting and finance resources of the school, to operate some kind of a more supported and successful learning community. Again, whatever that looks like to that family. And so we're not, at this point, we're not proposing anything, frankly, and we won't, because it'll take at least a year for us to learn from you what we need to do. Now, we can support you along the way. There are some pretty significant pieces that we have in place that we can use to support a group of families that are coming together around a common philosophy or around common content or curriculum. And we want to help there too, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So that is the acknowledgement that some of the things that we're doing right now won't appeal at all to you. And that's okay. And I just want you to know that our hope is that we can produce content and resources and software and documents and packets for devotionals and plays and skits and all the things that we do here, and many others that will be produced just for learning communities, that we can produce those things in a way that any group, whether they want to call themselves an American Heritage Family School or an American Heritage Commonwealth or an American Heritage Co-op or an American Heritage micro school, whether they want to call themselves that or not, we have something that we can share with them that helps them to ease the burden or to make the transition from public school a little bit easier. And ultimately that they can have success in moving from public school to this scary world of homeschool or online school or whatever it is they call it. So that's our hope. That's the acknowledgement that I just wanted to make sure was clear at the very beginning of this. And now I just want to introduce a couple people before we really dive in and share what we've been doing and where we're at and ultimately where we're going to, well, where we think we're going to go this year. And perhaps maybe we'll get into a little bit of what we think we're going to be doing next year. At least we can share some of those hopes. So I'm glad I did that little introduction first before Angie, because Angie just joined and she's one of the people I wanted to introduce to each of you, along with Tim Hall. So you'll see Tim or Timothy, I think we call him Tim, right? Is it Tim or Timothy?
Whatever you've got time for, Peter.
Great, well, I have time for Tim. Right, we were moving quick, right? And then Angie Blad here, who I've been working with, and some of you know very well, and you've worked with her for many, many years. Angie, I'll start with Angie. Angie is a longtime homeschooler, family schooler. She's run a little micro school for many, many years. She might call it more of a cooperative that she's run in the Omaha area. And Angie's worked with me in a lot of different ways, a lot of different capacities. I've loved working with Angie. I love Angie's insights. She's incredibly committed. She's incredibly consecrated in the work that she does in Omaha, and she feels deeply about the mission and the philosophy, the values that we espouse, and the methods that we use here at American Heritage School. And so she's an easy candidate for a first-year pilot. She's made some big progress in that regard, and I'm going to have her share at some point specifically what she's doing there in Omaha, what she's hoping to do this fall. That might happen in this meeting, and it might happen in the next webinar. Before I introduce Tim, I wanted to just let you know that this is one of the things that we feel like we can do and should do. At minimum, we should be meeting with you on a monthly basis to do a webinar where it's all about, finding out more. How are things going? What more do you think we can do to support you? How has the launch of LiftEd gone for those that are using LiftEd content this fall? Tim, now I'll introduce Tim. So Tim is someone who I've come in contact with more recently, and he has just proven himself to be quite an asset to the development of these family education centers, because Tim has a lot of background thinking through and operating a type of organized community in his area. He's from Idaho Falls. I don't know if that's where he's from, but that's where he's at right now. And Tim is in a master's program, or is it a PhD? Or is it a master's program, Tim?
Yeah, it's a doctoral program.
It's a doctoral program with Johns Hopkins, and he needs he needs a project as part of that thesis that he'll be producing. And he has thought a lot about learning communities and how to support them well. He even has a proposal that he made many years ago, or at least he created a proposal. I don't know to whom he shared that with, but I've read part of that, and so it's something that's really near and dear to his heart. And he's going to be working 10 to 15 hours a week on average with American Heritage School, specifically and focused on family education centers, which is our word. Just so you know, family education centers is our word that we use, is our kind of brand for that learning community that we want to support, because it will be a group of families that are supporting each other. In all cases, whether it's a micro school or a sister school or a cooperative or a family education center, like we're calling it, it doesn't function without the support. It doesn't function well without the support of the parents. The reason that's so important is because it has to be affordable for these families. When we're competing with public education, and we are, we're competing with free and easy. And so we have to make something that competes with free and easy, but does it a whole lot better, right? It has to be better than what they're coming from, and it has to compete with free and easy in some regard. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that with you here in just a little bit. Before I go any further, though, I wanted to just give a few minutes to Tim and Angie just to introduce themselves. And I tried to share some information about Angie and Tim, but these are the leaders of what we're building. And Marcy will be as well. Marcy's not here, so I won't introduce you to her, but Marcy has a school, Legacy Academy, up in Boise, that she's operated for a number of years, I think 8 years now, and her enrollment's close to 100. And so we really wanted to have a few different kinds of concepts that we're learning from very, very closely this year. Angie's that she's running. She's actually doing 2 different types of learning communities, and then Marcy has the school that she operates. Suzanne does something very similar to what Marcy does as well. Okay, Tim, Angie, what have I left out of that introduction, and what more would you like to add to your background so everybody can get to know you?
Angie, you better go first. You had a really nice foot waving at us. So I think it's
I know it's so rough when I am changing time zones, and I apologize for being late. I didn't get the time right, and we're on our way to a family reunion. But the only thing I would add is that I don't consider myself an expert, just someone who's done a lot of things and learned a lot of things along the way, made some mistakes, but through those mistakes, learned a lot of things. And so I hope that this experience for all of us is one where we're just trying things. This is a new frontier. And that's the exciting part, is we can craft things to be exactly how we want. We don't know if it will work, but we try it. And we share what we've learned so that we can all learn and grow together. So I don't feel like I'm an expert, but I am happy to share the things I've learned along the way, and hope that this group will be a place where we can learn and grow together, and really not feel like there's a specific template that we have to duplicate, but that we can feel free to do what's best for the area and the families that we are in. I've done a 1 day a week something because that's what my family needed. And I've done a 3 day a week something because that's what my family needed. And so just really doing what your family and your community needs, and not feeling the pressure that it has to look a certain way, but that really we become a resource for you, and that we provide help in whatever form that looks like, and then also be able to learn from you. So
awesome. Thanks, Angie. Tim.
Well, I'm a bit of the odd man out here, because most of you are here as kind of parents first, and you've been creating and looking for these solutions for your own families, and that's kind of what's brought you here. And I'm not different from that in some respect. We do homeschool our own children. I've also been a public school teacher and a private school teacher, so I've kind of seen all sides of this this thing. And now my full-time job is in corporate training, and so I do training programs at a nuclear research facility. So from adult education to K-12, I've kind of been around a lot of it, and And that's led me to ask a lot of questions. And so I don't even have the experience that Angie has. So I'll take a step even back from what she claims, and I'll say, I'm a fellow seeker with you, but I'm really, really excited about discovering what the right answers are. And so that's what my involvement is going to be, is primarily interfacing with you all and our pilot groups to discover what are the real needs and what pain points do you have that an institution like American Heritage could solve for you by creating really what I'm thinking of as an ecosystem. You know, it could be sets of resources, it can be sets of, you know, software, it can be templates for management, it can be training that you or people who work with you get, et cetera, et cetera. It can be ongoing support. And one that Peter, he mentioned several things earlier, curriculum and things like that, that you could get through this. But another one that I'd like to add in there is the benefit of being in a network of other learning communities doing the same thing all over the world. And so one of the things I'm really excited about is how we share resources. So, you know, if Suzanne creates something great, and I know they've actually already created a lot of really great models and curriculum and things like that that I've seen there, can that benefit somebody else somewhere else so they don't have to reinvent it from the beginning up? Anywhere from that to even maybe somebody in, you know, Iowa wants to have an experience at the place that Suzanne's built, and they can do a transfer. I mean, anything in between, right? So the benefits of being part of a network is for me one of the most fruitful lines of possibility here. So that's a bit of an introduction to me, and I will be working with you in meetings like this. I'll be reaching out to you. Actually, can I do this now, Peter? I'm just going to put a link in the chat, actually.
Yeah.
This is just a small form that I invite you to fill out today or tomorrow. It's some questions that I have initially for you that will help me get to know you. And really, like Peter said, we don't have solutions we're offering right now. So you're in at the most exciting time where your input is going to guide the avenues along which we seek solutions. So letting us know what your hopes, desires, challenges, problems, aspirations, those sorts of things are, that's going to guide how we start looking at this problem, even how we frame the questions we ask. And so in as much detail as you're willing to provide me that feedback, I'd be really grateful. And I think it will turn to your benefit as well. We'll have monthly webinars like Peter mentioned, but in addition to that, if you're willing, and I'll send out a message to everybody to gauge this, but if you're willing, and if you put your email on that list, I'm gonna send you a weekly email that will contain some thoughts, but also, most importantly, it will contain an invitation for you to give some feedback, and it'll just be one question a week. And it's you can almost think of it like a journal, right? I just want to hear how your experience is evolving over time and what challenges or questions you're wrestling with, so that I can know what those are and that we can discuss them as a team here and shape the solutions that we're creating for you. So that's me, and I'm really glad to meet y'all.
Thanks, Tim. That's really helpful, and we're really glad to have you. Tim, I haven't talked with Tim about this, but I'm hopeful that one of the first things that Tim could do, in addition to the things that he just shared with you, will be to just have listening sessions with each of you one-on-one to learn a little bit more about what does the learning community in Missouri look like, Suzanne? What's the learning community in St. George look like, Marin? And what's the learning community in Richfield look like? Or what are you hoping to do? And I think that will front load him and us with a lot of helpful context and information that guides us in kind of that initial work that we do and an initial discovery that we're doing with each of you. Okay. Let me share with you my screen. I'm going to share with you a document that I put together and share a couple of things that I shared with Tim last week that'll help us understand a little bit better why we're doing this in the first place. Now, this is going to be somewhat redundant for some of you because you were at the retreat and talked about these things generally. But I just wanted to show you a little infographic that I put together a long time ago. This strategy of supporting learning communities has been in the works for many, many years. And And Tim said, we don't have a lot of solutions for you right now, but we do have a couple pieces that could provide a good solution. But I wanted you to understand what the problem is. And I think you all know what the problem is because most of you have been supporting or participating in a learning community already that has helped you to go from public school to homeschool. Certainly has helped you in that transition, that very difficult transition. And others are thinking about that, right? Or certainly people that you're talking with are highly considering it. That is not going to end, right? And it's only going to increase. If the last 2 years have taught us anything, it's taught us that more and more families are getting to this point where enough is enough. And it's like the last straw, like it's that last thing. And it is different for every person. If you talk to families in California, the thing that really pushed them over the edge was sex ed. There's a lot of other things going on in California, but the kind of sex education that they're providing in California is that last thing for a lot of families that have kind of pushed them to look at something else. The problem isn't public school, though. The problem is caused by public school. Like what's going on in public school is fueling this, and it's only going to increase. So families need support, and they're going to need it more and more, and it's going to happen quite quickly over the next couple of years. The problem isn't that public school is failing on so many levels right now, and it's such an alarming rate. It's that when they go to homeschool, they burn out real quickly, 50% in 1 year, and another 50% of those that stay in the second year. So 75% in 2 years go back to public school. Some of them go to online school, some of them go to private school, but there are problems there. Kids burn out of what's traditionally an online school experience, and they want to go back to school with their friends. Private school is just a place where, it's a non-starter for most families because it's really expensive. So it's these school-supported learning communities that really are the missing piece, and that's the reason why this is such an important initiative for American Heritage School. It's why it's the most important initiative. Is we can build excellent content that support these communities. We can build that in a way that creates this really meaningful connection with parents, with their family, with a school, and that ultimately, encourages in-person learning. We can build the software in a way that actually gathers families virtually who live close together, so that organically they start to connect in person. So we are doing that, right, with the piece of software that we're developing. And then we can use EdTech in a way that really supports the values of the school and the mission, and solves some of the most important jobs to solve for public families specifically. And you're going to hear that a lot. I know that there are a lot of other groups and it's important to consider what we can do for those veteran homeschoolers, even all the way to the scared public school family who's never done it before and never thinks they will do it because it's too daunting for them. Like, so this is the spectrum, right? You have Suzanne and Angie and Marin and all of you, right, who've been doing this for decades now. And that's this side of the spectrum. And then on the other end, you have a family who's never done it, right? Who's only thought about it, who's anxious. They're in public school right now. They have a tremendous amount of anxiety about what's going on, but they have never done it because they're too scared to do it. And so that's that spectrum that we're working with. We're going to focus on this side of it. And I know many of you are here right now, and you're going to be very helpful, and you are already very helpful to these families as they come into homeschooling. But we're going to be focused on this family over here and helping them to come out of public school, to give them something that they can look at, that they look at and they say, oh, that's not homeschool, at least not the way I knew it. And that's not online school, at least not the way we experienced it during COVID, or whatever they think, right? That's likely what they'll think. And it's certainly not private school, because I can see it only costs me tens of dollars a month as opposed to thousands in some cases, right? Not just hundreds, but thousands of dollars a month. And they'll see that solution and they'll say, I can do that, right? And they look up a local family education center or local micro school or local cooperative, and they quickly connect with you, right? They quickly connect with the leader, and they see that leader's landing page, and they learn about who's participating already and what they're going to be learning this next year. in some of the activities that they did last year and watch testimonials and videos from the founders, right, of that particular family education center. That's the kind of solution that when they look at it, they'll say, I can do that. And right now, it might just sound visionary, right? It might sound somewhat idealistic, overly optimistic, but we will produce that, and we have to, because that is the piece that will help them to come away from something that's somewhat toxic for their family. It certainly is destructive of the values and that they're trying to teach and reinforce in their home. Now let me share with you the prototype so you can understand the jobs that we feel we need to solve for that family. And that's really where I'd like to stop today. I'd like for you to evaluate where we're at with these jobs that we're trying to solve for these families coming out of public school. Some of you feel that, you know, more closely, like Ashley, for example, who was in public school 2 years ago, not last year, right? So it's pretty close to your heart still. And all of you can remember, you know, what that felt like. So I'm now going to just share another document that that helps you kind of see the case statement or the business plan, if you will, for a family education center. This is a working document, please. It's not perfect, but it's something. Angie and I worked on this with Marcy, and we came up with a little bit of a mission here. The Family Education Center Network will significantly increase the likelihood of success for families seeking faith-filled, character-focused learning through home-centered, school-supported learning communities that offer friendship, support, motivation, and accountability for students and parents. That "and parents" was something that Angie felt really strongly about because it's not just the students that need to feel support and need to have support, it's the parents as well. And I can see that you agree. I'm going to read through this first, and then we're going to go back to it. So just take notes if you wouldn't mind. Just take some notes of your thoughts, or you can write them in the chat, and we'll come back to them in about 10 minutes. This is what we think. We think students hire a family education center for these 3 reasons. Now, actually, this is not what we think. This is what Clayton Christensen thinks. If you read the book Disrupting Class or Disruptive Innovation, Clayton Christensen was a remarkable man. He's passed away from cancer now, but just an incredible Latter-day Saint human. He was the dean of the business school at Harvard for years, an area authority for the church. And he wrote a book about this. He said, students hire a school for friends, to feel success, and to develop academically. And they're in that order, just so you know. I'm not asking anybody whether they agree with this part. Like, this is how it is, right? So these are not my ideas. They're not up for debate. Those are the reasons students hire a school. They want friends first. They want to feel success. They want to feel successful. And they do want to demonstrate knowledge, right? They want to acquire knowledge, again, in that order. And maybe it shouldn't be. We can all debate, like, that shouldn't be the right order, right? They should want other things, but it makes a little difference. This is what they want, right?
Peter,
Parents
can I ask a question about the success? Are you talking about, like, they want feedback, like they want some acknowledgement or validation? Is that what you're talking about right there? Is that what that means for success?
Yeah, sadly, it means more to them the grade. Yeah, but it is recognition, right? A grade.
Recognition. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, a grade provides students recognition of some accomplishment or some work that they've done. However, flawed we feel that is, and many of us feel that. Yeah. I don't think
it's flawed. It's just, but it is what it is, and I just want to make sure, like, because I would agree that's you're right. If that's what that means, this is how it is.
Yeah, that's right. The jobs a parent hires us, again, think about the parent who's in public school right now, who's never homeschooled. Think about when you were that parent. The jobs that they think they're looking for right now are these. Now, these change over time as they get into it, but initially, these are the jobs they're looking for a school or for an alternative to fill. Custodial, it's the number one. It's not the number one, actually. These are not in that order, but it's high. Parents need a place where children can go for a few hours a day. Success. Parents need for their children to feel successful academically. That success that the student wants is perhaps even more important to the parent, that they feel good, that they don't feel guilt about what they're doing, that they might fail their children. Affordable. Parents want a great education and expect to pay very little for it. That's unfortunate, but it's true. Safe. Parents need their children to learn in a safe environment. Values. Parents want their children to learn in a way that supports and strengthens their values and standards. Mentors. Parents want children to have adult mentors and role models. Friends. Parents want children to have positive friends and influences and need their own connection and need their own connection and like-minded and supportive parents to lean on. Support. Parents need support, friendship, motivation, and accountability too. Now, these are all different levels, and every parent would answer them a little bit differently. Some are more important than others, but they're all very high as far as, you know, and this is a lot of research that I've done over the last 11 years to identify why do parents come here to American Heritage School, and why do they come to homeschool, and why do they fail, really? Why do they fail? And that's where you get this, this data here. Thousands and thousands of families in public school and private school, and then alternatives to both of those kind of collectively bring these to the top. Those are the big problems, right? Those are the big jobs to solve. And so the objective of a family education center network, a network of learning communities, is first to provide a solution that's accessible, sustainable, and affordable for every family of any faith, any family looking for a high character, faith-centered alternative to public school. The second objective is to provide a solution that fulfills the mission of American Heritage School. So provide a solution that's accessible, that they can do for a long time, not just for 1 year, but for as many years as they want, super turnkey, and that's super affordable, right? Then do that in a way that fulfills the mission of American Heritage School. Do that in a way that helps children to develop and to be more useful in the hands of the Lord in building the kingdom of God on earth. That helps children to increase faith in and a knowledge of the plan of salvation. That helps children to develop a love, understanding, and appreciation for America's founding and founding fathers. That helps them develop the tools and knowledge to be able to make self-education a lifelong pursuit. That helps children to increase, develop I'm forgetting, become Christians in all aspects of their lives, to discern between right and wrong. And there's one more that I've forgotten. What is it, Suzanne? Which one did I forget? But you get the idea, right? We want to do everything that we do in a way that helps them to develop, to become those kinds of learners, those kinds of humans. And if we do that, then I think we're successful. Our solution includes these 6. Content. Develop curricular and non-curricular resources and experiences that develop the mind, body, and spirit by study and also by faith. And the content has to be remarkable in every way. It's interesting. I'm actually down here at the studio. This just opened a couple weeks ago, and this is our Vineyard studio. And let me just give you a little tour. I'm not at American Heritage right now. This is down in about 10 minutes away from the school. And we have an incredible team here at the studio. Say hi, everyone. Hi. It's not everyone. We have a bunch of script writers upstairs and video editors. And then we have this beautiful, will be under construction here again very soon. This is a large studio where the teachers will come in. There'll be a little home kind of setting, a platform here with, you know, the floor will be built out, the little makerspace section. We'll have this big, massive window that's framed in like a window that'll play different images and different outdoor scenes. And there'll be a little there'll be a big bookshelf here, and they'll walk up into this like kitchen-like area, and there'll be a whiteboard over here. And anyway, it's going to be a really beautiful set that they're building out to record all the teachers. And Suzanne's kind of laughing, I can tell, because she remembers where we were 2 years ago, right? There's another studio on this side, I won't show it to you, where we'll record all the math and language arts content that will be forthcoming after we've refined that resource. In about 6 months, we'll start recording that content. Anyway, it's really, really exciting. The way that we're producing content, it will be incredibly dynamic, engaging, interactive in the way that students access it. Connection, that's the next solution. we have to connect students locally and virtually. The learning experience platform will facilitate that. But in person, we'll have to be in wherever families can find, and they do. You'll find places to rent and homes to meet in, and even churches. And I can't share a lot of details about that point, but we have some really exciting things that we're working on in downtown Salt Lake with the church, and I think that day is coming, everybody. I think it is coming when there will be churches available to these learning communities. And so it's important that we get moving and that we do our very best, right? Do the very best we can to establish this network so that when that happens, that we can say, oh yeah, we've got groups here, and here that would love to have access to a church building Monday through Thursday for 3 to 4 hours. Custodial. Provide learning experiences for a certain number of hours per day. That's important too to a public school family that's coming out of public school, knowing that, hey, there's a place where my student is going to go still for a few hours a day. Angie's going to produce the very first concept of that for us in Omaha, and we're really excited about that. But some of you may be doing that already and want support in providing that kind of an experience for families. Cost. Parents collectively share required coaching and administration to reduce the cost. Labor. Group students by age range to minimize the workload, develop software and resources to dramatically reduce operations burden. So trying to take away all the things that currently families and parents have to do to run a school. If there's anything there that we can automate, if there's anything there that we can simplify, through some piece of software perhaps, or some curricular resource, or some type of schedule, then we want that. Those are the things that we want to have a laser focus on, and even in our early concepts, so that this becomes something like the transition, so that a learning community can be built similar to the way a bishop turns over in a ward. I've said this before. When a new bishop is called, the ward doesn't fall apart, right? You give them a handbook and maybe a little bit of training and some keys, and they're off and running, right? They figure it out. That only happens because of how well organized all of the systems and processes and training material are, how accessible they are to that bishop, that new incoming bishop. And so we have to create this kind of system where it isn't dependent on this single person, this mother who is making this Herculean effort and spending her entire day and night operating the school. And when she leaves, it goes away, right? Because that's what happens to most cooperatives and most commonwealths, is they're run by this hero of a woman who one day says, I can't do it anymore. My kids have graduated and I'm not doing it. And then it's done. Or they decide after a year, it's too much work and it's gone. And so it's dependent on a person. A real sustainable solution can't be dependent on a person, at least not one, right? It has to be a collective effort that is very manageable for these families and for these mothers primarily who are supporting it. Simple. Develop software to support a high level of autonomy in learning and to reduce operational burden. Planning, prep, grading, administration, all those things, we can do it in a way that reduces that burden. We can provide those kinds of services for these groups. These are the kind of materials we've come up with so far, the kinds of operational documents and resources, training materials, certification processes, or just certifications, right? If you want a grader, if you want to give credit, then you get your own grader, right? You don't need to pay for us to grade your stuff. Get your own coaches, right? Provide your own tutors, your own proctors, and then it reduces that financial burden. Now, maybe they want to pay for it. We can provide that service. We are right now, so we can continue to do that. Legal, curricular, and marketing. There are many others, and this list will grow. But lots of work to do here, and this is kind of where we're starting with these 2 groups that we're immediately supporting this fall, maybe 3. Anyway, notes or questions, comments, suggestions. How do you feel about that kind of starting point for American Heritage Schools and Family Education Center network and initiative. Anyone want to share? Any questions? Any concerns? Any
Peter.
questions? Yeah.
You know that I always have something to say, but I was gonna say I see a lot on that list. First of all, I love what you have on there. I don't see anything contradictory. That's my favorite part. But also, you asked the question right before you showed that document. What does supporting a family education center look like, and what would the needs of each of your groups be? So I was, making some notes to myself. The things that would benefit our group are on that list. There's some really exciting things
Good.
on there. And so I think you've nailed it. Like, I see that what you have on there would absolutely cover, whether it's a beginning group for those just, a drop off for those just barely coming out of public school. I think the principles that you have in there are good for the whole spectrum. So I think you guys have really nailed it.
Thanks, Suzanne. Of course, some groups that are on this side of the spectrum might only need, might need less than a group that's just getting started, but
sure,
you feel like even a group like yours or a person like you who's been doing this for many, many years could be supported by some of those things.
Yes, absolutely.
That's great.
I am one of those, excuse me, I am one of those that I started homeschooling during COVID.
Mhm.
We did that first year of everybody go home, and in 3 days you're all online. And we were in the unfortunate situation of we'd only been at that school for 4 days because we'd just moved. So my kids were the ones that basically informed me they'd had enough. And so, but I'm still in those very beginning stages. I'm still more of an unschooler than a schooler. I am the parent that's floundering and trying to figure out how to do this, especially when I'm low energy. And so that document looks really good to me to feel like, oh, I could actually become a founder with that kind of support.
Yeah. Good. Great. That's what we're hoping. Of course, that represents a tremendous amount of work, just so you know, to pull all those people. I mean, we have some pretty elaborate plays and devotionals, and they're great, but to get them into a format that could function with a group of 5, 10 families, that's a fair amount of work. Yeah.
So, sorry.
Go ahead.
My name's Camille Condi. We're here in Forney, Texas. And we've homeschooled for 6 years, but we are in the process of using the Lifted program to start a co-op in our community. I've been waiting and waiting for a co-op, and then I realized, why not me? Why don't I start it?
Yeah.
Because
right.
it wasn't coming. So, but we're really excited. But the nice thing is we're using the Lifted program to give us all kind of a center to look to and all be on the same page with those extracurriculars. And then we still do just our, math and literature or language arts on our own. And then we get together. So we're working out the logistics of it. But I kind of came onto this call just to see from something like that, where would these schools come into play? Like, is this something that like down the road we could possibly transition over into something more formal?
That's such a good segue. That's such a good segue. Do you mind if I let Ashley share, and then I'll come back to your question, and I'll add some more to it that I think is the kind of the next and final piece of this webinar, is just helping you maybe understand what a learning community can look like if you want to build around common content like LiftEd, right? And how that sets you up for next year when we actually have something officially called a family education center. I'll answer that in just a little bit. Go ahead, Ashley.
Okay, so I was just gonna say, I feel like almost kind of sad because I started a little bit later in life with my family on this whole process. So I kind of feel like we're kind of pioneering this, not for me necessarily, for my family, but for this community. I want something for the community. And so I love the idea of what you said, it being like this place where like when we're done discovering, it's still going, it's still moving forward. And I love that idea. I would love to build something for our community because I see such a need for there to be that in our community right now. And so I am super excited about this program. I do have some questions from some of my friends that are interested in this. Like, a lot of us have like kind of a good thing going and we love more of a community, but is it necessary like to do online? Like, can we have like a, and maybe I should talk to you more about this later, but more of a pilot program with the combination of all of it, like some of us doing Lift Ed, some of us not doing Lift Ed, or do we want all of us doing Lift Ed?
Well, that's actually a great question as well, to kind of close on with what Camille asked.
Okay.
You know that you can build a learning community around anything. It could be, it doesn't have to be content for sure, right? Lift Ed will provide content this year, but it will provide it in a way that supports, that really facilitates the gathering of people geographically. So it's one of our purposes, but it certainly doesn't mean that that a cooperative or any learning community would have to be using any Lift Ed content in order to be a strong community. We would just support them differently, right? They wouldn't call themselves a family education center, or at least not an American Heritage Family Education Center. There will be certain markers that help us to, and we'll figure those out this year. This year we'll learn, what is an American Heritage Family Education Center? What does that mean? It needs to mean something to the family, right? When they see that, they need to know, oh, I know what that means because I was at a family education center, or I've been using Lift Ed content, or when they're a part of an American Heritage micro school. That means something. It means something in terms of what software they're using, what curriculum they're using, what methods they're employing. It'll become a brand in and of itself, and that brand needs to be, we'll have to protect that brand, and the protection of that brand will be based around how a family uses American Heritage to be supported. Now, many groups will say, you know what, we want more autonomy. So we want to be an American Heritage cooperative, right? Which means that I just pick and choose whatever resource I want and any content that we want. And we get together and we might grab some of these packets and do some plays, and we might use their devotionals kit, and they become an American Heritage cooperative. And people then know what that means. That just means that they're using pieces of American Heritage School to support what they're already doing. So we'll have to figure out what it means, what it means to be an American Heritage School, ... whatever that is, micro school, sister school, family education center, cooperative. The point is, we want to provide support to any group. So no, don't feel that you're restricted. Now, there are groups this year, like Angie's, for example, where she's finding families in her local community who are going to, each day, they're going to jump on together, whether from home or at her home. And actually, it's, in her case, it's going to be at her home. They're all coming together, and they're going to spend 30 minutes to 40 minutes when the lesson of the day drops. They're all going to be on their devices, right? Their tablets, in the same room. And they're going to be navigating this path and learning from the teacher that we've recorded right here in the studio, answering those questions with each other sitting right there, which would be kind of weird, right? But it'll be fun, even more fun in person. And then they'll have a discussion. They'll have their own class. They won't jump on Zoom after that. We'll give them the same outlines we give the coaches who coach Power Hour today. That's going to be called Connect Time. So Lift Ed will be two things: Explore Time and Connect Time. So all the content will be Explore Time when they're learning, and then Connect Time will be what was formerly called Power Hour. But we really, really hope that a family education center would not be jumping online for discussions, right? They're there together. That's the whole point. That they can have those kinds of discussions in person and do it way better than we could ever do it online. But how do we support that so that that mom doesn't have to prepare, but maybe 30 minutes before? Well, we give the mom the same outline and the same resources that we give the coaches that coach Power Hour every day, that coach those classes. And so that becomes another resource that we share with a family education center or any learning community who wants to have those discussions in person locally. We hope that our live class, our Connect Time, becomes obsolete. We hope we never have to do it. because there's so many family education centers or micro schools that are getting together every day and having those discussions in person. That'll never happen probably, because there'll be some families, will always be families who the family education center that's close to them, they don't want to participate in it, or they like doing it in their home better. And so they like jumping on Zoom, or they're too far away, or you've kicked them out of your family education center. Who knows? There's like a broad list of reasons why a family might still want to have access to a live class virtually, but that's not the ideal. Tim.
Yeah, and I just want to throw in something here that will address a couple of questions you've asked, Ashley, and actually some of my own. So I've talked to a few people about this, about Lift Ed, and one of the reactions has been, you know, we've got a good thing going, and I can't imagine putting my 9-year-old in front of a screen for 2 hours a morning when I'm right here with them and we're doing these things, right? And so one of the things I want to amplify in terms of vision is that Lift Ed is a couple different things, and mostly what most of you will see it as right now is a set of classes that can be taken online, right? It's these 2-week units that you can engage in virtually, and now Peter's helped amplify that vision to say, hey, you don't have to do the discussion part online, you could do that in person, right, potentially in the future. But Lift Ed at its core is what's called a learning experience platform. And that's different from a learning management system. All of us have grown up with, well, not grown up, but recently, in recent years, we've become familiar with learning management systems like Blackboard or Canvas or Google Classroom or all these things, right, that maybe we've used in college or our kids used at public school or whatever. That's a learning management system. And those are very traditional. They're very, you just get courses. Here's your course, here's your course. And oftentimes they're online courses. Here's your online course. Do this, then do that, then do that, all online. A learning experience platform is different in that it gives you the freedom to string together all different kinds of experiences into essentially learning pathways. So I actually work with these professionally too in my professional work. We can have a learning pathway in the future on Lift Ed that isn't a series of online interactions. It's rather a learning path that says, okay, read this book, then have this kind of a discussion, then watch this play, then have this discussion, then write a blog post about, you know, whatever you can imagine that's a learning experience. A learning experience platform allows you to create these and string them together in a pathway. And so don't think of Lift Ed only as the content that's coming through Lift Ed right now. Lift Ed is a platform that has a lot of possibility to deliver all kinds of different learning experiences in the future.
Great.
And so some of those will be online and some of them won't.
And that's what we love about it, is we feel like it's more of a jumping off point. So we are all kind of learning generally the same things together, but then as we get together as a co-op, we can go from there and learn more in depth, or have people share different things that they understood from it. We are actually going to be doing the Zoom class just because most of the people in our co-op have 4 or more kids, and it's really nice to have an hour to get the dishes done or things like that, right? And then we're far enough apart that we can't all come together in the morning, but we will come together twice a week where we go further into detail on what we're studying. So I'm looking forward. I'm hoping that the teachers, the Lift Ed program will have the details of what we're going to be learning far enough in advance so that we can kind of prepare ourselves for those co-op classes as well.
You're going to do the celebration part of that.
Yes.
It's you'll let Lift Ed take care of providing great teachers and interaction with other students, and then access to coaches to have discussions. And then you want to do the projects, the celebrations, the jumping off of that content. That's actually
the fun stuff. Yeah.
Fun stuff, yeah. And you know what? That's a curricular resource in and of itself. Compiling all those kinds of ideas of things that they can be doing in a group to celebrate and demonstrate learning together. That's something that Tim's going to help us with as well, that we're integrating with the content. And back to you, Camille, in your first question. Any group can can build a learning community around LiftEd content this year if they want to. Now they could build it around any content, but LiftEd content will provide some things that families just don't have access to right now. They don't have access to a platform that lets them learn together. And that's the real innovation in the piece of software that we're delivering, is that when students are learning online, they're not alone. They're not in front of a screen, they're in front of people. They're in front of other friends. They're in front of you actually, because you'll contribute to that lesson in some pretty exciting ways. Still, they'll connect with their grandparents, with your friends, whoever has contributed to that lesson each day. They'll respond to questions that the teacher is asking, and then they'll watch answers that were given by other students in the class, and they'll go back and forth in conversations with those friends and those students that they're in class with. It will feel like they're in class while they're online. That's the big difference between online school and homeschool and LiftEd. And we don't quite know what to call it yet, because I don't know. If somebody can come up with a name for that kind of school, then tell me. I'd love to know what it is. But any group of families can gather around that very easily. It wouldn't take much for a group of 5, 6, 7 families to say, hey, we're gonna start a school with American Heritage School this year, and every Monday meet at my house, and every Tuesday meet at her house, and every Wednesday they just kind of rotate through. Or maybe one family wants to have them always at their house, the group of families, and the parents come and drop them off, and they learn together with the students. That doesn't require a single parent for as long as you want them learning together. Could be 30 minutes, could be an hour. It just really depends on how deep they explore the content. And then the discussion could be led by one of the parents for all the kids together. All of them can have a discussion about history together, or science together, or art, or music, or literature, or geography, or these other courses that we're adding to it, like health and principles of leadership and Who I Really Am. I don't know if you've heard of the Who I Really Am program, but we're incorporating that course into the offering this year as well. But it will require very little preparation. You want to have access to the content to be able to prepare early enough. That's probably something that's going to be the hardest thing to fulfill this year, because I think we'll be a couple weeks ahead. Maybe we'll get to about a month ahead. That should be enough to do what you're doing. But it'll be the tightest it will ever be this year. In fact, we were just working with this team this morning about the schedule. And that studio that I told you is being built out. That'll be done at the end of June. And so we can't even record any content until July 5th is the first day that we record. We have 10 amazing teachers that we've hired, done a ton of interviewing and auditions with teachers, and it's I don't know, it's hard to explain because there's so much in it, and there's so much more than we've ever offered, that it's hard to encapsulate adequately, but you'll be pretty excited about the LiftEd experience, especially. Now, for your families, just know, and I'll send this out for those who jumped off, but if you want to gather around LiftEd content and you want to build a community around LiftEd content, we want to facilitate that. So in as much as it's helpful to have discounts that you can share with your families, they might not be lifetime members, but if they're a part of Tim's research and development this year, then we want to share with you a code that lets them, and you, if you've already signed up for less than 75% off of the price is the baseline cost for the teacher, the coach. It covers no overhead, it covers no development, but at least it covers the coach, right? And so that's why it's kind of our very bottom of what we're offering. A whole year experience, comprehensive experience, a whole school replacement is $1,056. That's full price, and 75% off makes about $250 for a child to have a great education. So I'll share that code with this group. If you didn't get an email from me and you came to this because you heard about it from someone else, then I don't know who you are and I don't have your email. So just share your email here and Tim will jot it down. He can add it to the ones that he has already, and then we can get a code out to you that you can share with the families that might be interested in participating in this with you. Again, use that if you're willing to be a lift ed, we'll just call it a lift ed learning community. If you're willing to use lift ed content and you're willing to let us talk with you occasionally and even potentially come and visit you and watch what you're doing, then we want you to have at least the lift ed access to the content and the class the way that you want it to facilitate that. So maybe that will be helpful as well. That will end June 30th. So you got only 2 weeks before enrollment ends. Now we can manually add enrollment. So if you get a family that's just like, I really want to be a part of this and it's past June 30th, then you'll just have to contact us manually. We can add them to your group. And then you'll have to decide, do I want them to be in my own group or do I want them to be in a group with other kids from around the world, like the other lift ed students? And so we'll set that up based on what you want as well. If you want just your group to be a group in lift ed, then we can facilitate that. If you want the kids in your group to be a part of a broader group, then that's what will happen automatically. That's how we'll approach it. So you really just need to tell us if you want your own group, and then we need to set that up manually as well. Is anyone here in California? Questions?
Peter, how
Yeah.
big would the group need to be its own group?
Oh, that's such a good question. We've thought about that a lot. Angie and I have talked about that with Marcy, and we think a group as small as 5 families can provide a real supportive community. That's probably, I don't know. It could be even smaller, but I think you guys should answer that question. Why am I?
Well, so what I'm asking is, are you saying that they would have their own like Zoom class with their own teacher? That's so like, because I know right now you're looking at what, 60 to 70 students in a class?
Own Explore Time class. Yeah, the class that they're in when they're exploring and they're doing their little Kahoot review game, and not their class time, their live class. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, because I was going to say you'd have to have a pretty big group to get your own coach and everything like that. So okay, you're just talking about Explore Time class, so it doesn't have to be as big with the Explore Time, but then they can be more broad with more children in the coach class. Yeah, because Explore Time, there's not a variable cost to Explore Time. There's no variable cost there. It's all. So that can just be our group if we choose to. That's right. That's exactly right. We just have to let you know. Yeah, and in the future, you'll actually have a way to join each other's groups, to set up your own groups, to even opt out of a group altogether. We won't have that technology built version 1, but next year, Lift Ed, when someone signs up, they'll actually sign up for an Explore Time group. They'll say, I want to be with a group in my area, or I want to be in this other group that Ashley formed, right? And here's the code from Ashley's group, and you punch in the code, and it just connects you with Ashley's group, and so it'll all happen automatically. That's for Explore Time, right? That's for that learning time, that learning path, Explore Time. Okay, thank you. Yeah. This year we have to do that all manually, but it's okay. That's why we've limited it to 1,000 students, and we have about 850 students right now. That's why I'm thinking by the end of June it'll be full. I have to send out an email that's just kind of last call, and I'm sure when I do that. And then we're also promoting it on Facebook broadly so that we can get some families in here who have never homeschooled. We really want to have a good group of families that have never homeschooled using Lift Ed this year. We'll learn a lot from them. The information that we'll learn from them will be significant and different from the kind of information we're getting from other families who homeschooled. We'll have about 2 or 3 of those families ourselves. So if you need any feedback, let us know. So I kind of figure that even though we haven't messaged this to those families, that we do have a good percentage of those 850 students right now. Maybe not a good percentage, but there's a subset of those. It could be even as high as 10%, right? That have never homeschooled. And so we'll be figuring that out pretty soon. We have our first Lift Ed parent kind of orientation, student orientation webinar on the 27th of this month, later on. You should have received an email if you're signed up for Lift Ed with that information. Just yesterday, I think that went out.
yeah, that's when we'll start to share a lot of information for how the classes will form and what to expect the first week of school, and meet your teachers and then meet your coaches. And we're going to do a lot of things preparatory throughout the summer so that the first day of school, the first day of Lift Ed, they're much more prepared. They have their profile built out. They know what to expect. They know how to use the platform. They know how to access to sign in and access the dashboard and the explore time with their class, with their group, and connect time with their class. That's all going to happen during a series of webinars and large and small, webinars that we're doing this summer. That starts on the 27th of June.
Right. And I'm assuming those would be recorded so any latecomers can go back and do those themselves, correct?
Yeah. Yep. That's right. Yep. That's exactly right. Once a lesson drops and they have access to it, the purpose of it dropping at a specific time is to encourage them to go together with it. And we're going to experiment with that. We're going to find out this year how many students actually went together when they were learning. And we're making a lot of assumptions about that whole process, but we're going to try to set it up in a way that encourages them to go together. And then we'll evaluate that experience. How connected was it really? How often did they share responses to other students? How often did they engage with other students' comments? 2 questions. And how many parents left secret messages for them about the faith principle that we're connecting? How many of them completed the whole thing? We'll just have a lot of analytics that we're looking at to prove true various assumptions that we're making about this whole process, and we'll use that data to make it better for the next year, and even make it better immediately. In some cases, we'll be making improvements every 2 weeks to Lift Ed. So there'll be a new release that fixes bugs and that adds, some piece of functionality, or adds some piece of functionality to the experience every week. So 2 weeks in, it'll be 1.1, and 4 weeks in, it'll be 1.2, and it'll just kind of carry that way until about February of the next year, when we'll stop producing updates that are not related to bug fixes. And all of our updates will be saved. All of our improvements will be saved for the launch of version 2 of Lift Ed that will kind of reveal at the retreat, like we always do. We'll talk about what's forthcoming, and there's some really exciting things that we won't even have this whole year that will be coming next year. Explore paths on the path that allows them to go deeper and kind of autonomously use their own agency and their own self-government to explore where they have interests. And those are things that are coming in version 2. Yeah, I could go on, but I probably shouldn't. And we're already over time. I don't want to take any more time from you. But Tim will be in touch with each of you. And if you feel this isn't the right time, then you just politely decline, or you can even rudely decline. He's a really nice guy. He won't care one way or the other. And then we'll schedule another webinar in about a month where we talk about things a little bit more specifically, more granular. Like, this is what Tim's learned from each of you, and this is how he feels we can help you right away. Whatever the lowest hanging fruit is for us to support you, then we'll find out what those are and help you however we can. Yes, you can be involved in helping take this to Las Vegas. Do you know Danielle, the person who's here from Vegas? Who is that? There's somebody here from Vegas?
So I think that was Ashley Peterson, but it looks like she may have jumped off.
Oh yeah, it was. I think she's a friend of my sister-in-law's. Yeah. Did you get her contact information?
I did.
Oh, good.
I even repasted it by accident into the chat. So
yeah, that's how I saw it.
Peter,
Okay.
would you be that document you shared with us on screen? Would you be willing to send that to us? I really liked that. I'd like you.
Oh, absolutely. Yep, for sure.
Thank you.
I'll put it on in the cloud and then share a link with you.
Thank you.
Of course. Both of them, the infographic and the kind of the prototype document. We'll share both of them. I guess it doesn't hurt to share both of them.
Well, not the one that shows, like the Lift Ed thing with the different why people fail, but the one with the protocols, what people are looking for in a school.
Great.
Or why they want a school.
The meat document.
Yeah.
Not the graphic one. Yeah. Perfect. You didn't like the hearts and the smiles and things that I put on there?
That was lovely, but it didn't give me what I need.
Just kidding.
Peter, Cami asked earlier for a definition of micro school, and really part of the answer there is it's usually just a group of parents who get together and create a school for their own children. Sometimes, and this is not just an American Heritage thing, it's become more popular during COVID. Some parents are even hiring professional teachers just to teach their group of children among their 10 families or whatever. It can look different ways. But really the answer there, Cami, is we don't know what the different levels quite will look like yet. Like Peter said, some people will want this as just kind of a co-op. Hey, we want to use some a la carte resources from you. Others, this will be their whole school. Like we've got kind of in Boise this year, that prototype is a whole school, an actual school that people pay tuition and go to, using this as their, their whole thing. So, and there will be levels in between. And so defining those is one of our big jobs this year, and figuring out what the needs are at those different levels.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer. We don't know. And we're just throwing out these commonly accepted words and phrases and titles for different kinds of learning communities. The broadest title that we can give what we're talking about is a learning community. And then as we go along and find out, oh, generally we could support groups, these learning communities in these 5 different ways, that 98% of the learning communities out there could fall into these 5 categories. Now, what do we call them? Let's call this one our cooperative group, because it's it provides the most autonomy. And maybe this is a family education center because it provides a little bit more structure, but not a lot. And it still uses parents to support. And maybe we'll call this one a micro school because they use all Lift Ed content and all American Heritage School content. And they're a micro school of American Heritage School, and that's what that means, right? And that's what they want. And maybe there's then a sister school kind of a relationship where a micro school grows to a certain level and they become a sister school, because now we know that the difference between a sister school and a micro school is they're still fully accredited through American Heritage School. They have high school students that are getting credits and graduating from American Heritage, and it's diploma granting and all of these things, right, that might go along with that. But they're this size, so now they become a sister school. That will all be defined this year. And by the end of this year, and when we launch this program next fall, which is what our hope is, which is what our goal is, and that's ambitious. That's really, really ambitious. To try to do that in 1 year, especially on the backs of a piece of software that we're just testing this year, and content that we're just testing, like math and language arts. But we have always been like that. It's always been like that. And we just need to keep moving as quickly as we can, because those needs are coming much faster than what we thought. And we will be grateful that we pushed hard in 2024 when this comes at us like an onslaught, right? And it's a flood then. With the stroke of a pen, the government could do anything, could do one little thing that could drive tens of thousands of families, that's hundreds of thousands of students, right, into something, into needing some reliable solution that perhaps may need to be accredited per the government's regulation or whatever, right? And they'll need to have a place where they can go. And we want to be ready for that. And it'll be on the backs of this kind of a network of learning communities that they will be successful. It's not homeschool where they'll be successful. I'm just sorry. I wish it could be, but it can't. I know that now after 10 years of providing homeschool resources to tens of thousands of children. And it can't be online school. It's just not good enough. And it's too lonely, and there's not enough accountability or connection. And it can't be private school. It just can't, because families can't afford it. So it's got to be something else. Thank you all. Love meeting with you. Thanks for spending an hour and a half or so with us, and we'll be in touch. Send those out. I'll send those to Tim, and Tim will get them out to you. Okay, bye now.